Greetings!
My name is Alec, but you can call me Alessandro Lorenzo Greco. We are here today with look 4 from my collection POV. This piece I absolutely adore. It challenged me, and the fact that it has seen the light of day warms my heart greatly. Before we go on, we are here with a new setup. I watched a YouTube video about making more visually appealing videos, and one of the points or tidbits was depth of field between the subject and the background. In my previous videos, I was, right up against that wall, but I figured, what, let's try and mix it up. Let's go for a more closer angle of the face. So far in this collection, we've done punk evening wear, women's Paris, winter ready to wear, groovy cowboy. Now we're venturing into drag costuming. I'd say this piece had the most changes. It originally had a very different fabric, different silhouette. I knew sketching this look, I wanted it to be one of the tent poles of the collection. I think this piece really took form once I found the fabric. Leading on from the cowboy look from look 3, I really wanted to drift away from design or a look that only had 1 or 2 colors. Previous sketches always had that sort of mermaid finish or hoop skirt finish at the bottom. It was really just about what the bodice was going to be doing. I also knew I wanted this look to be modeled by a drag artist because I was going for such a grandiose and larger than life silhouette, and I feel like that really would be complemented and complement a drag artist. Yeah, I discovered this beautiful fabric from Fabric Lab and started sketching, and I came to this design, a fitted bodice with extended panels at the front and on the side. This is followed by a pencil skirt and a hoop skirt beneath that, and we have a cute little headpiece just to finish things off. Similar to look 1, I made the pattern by draping fabric on the mannequin and then transferring that to tracing paper where we added seam allowance and notches. I came up with this nice design while draping. Photo, things look a little bit boxy, but I feel like that has to do with me pinning it on incorrectly and also because of the mannequin. At this point, I was going back and forth on what I wanted those extended panels or tentacles, I was calling them, and what their purpose or function would be. Like, were they going to wrap around the sort of like a Sleeping Beauty, Aurora, princess sort of look? Were they going to just flop down or drape down? Were they going to stick out with boning or fusing to really get that shape? I wasn't sure, but I kept going back and forth. Pencil skirt pattern I found just from a YouTube video that showed us how to make a really simple pencil skirt from a waist and hip measurements. The hoop skirt required mats as well in order to make sure that the fabric was going to drape over the hoop skirt entirely. Annoyingly, the fabric I'd chosen wasn't wide enough to fit the entire hoop skirt, so that it could just be cut out as one panel. I had to divide it up, which at first annoyed me. I'm not too sure why. So with everything good to go, we started to cut out the fabric. I loved this fabric. I felt like it gave me an upholstery vibe. It also reminded me of this stool I have in my bathroom, so maybe that's why I chose the fabric. At this point, I hadn't moved into my worker space yet. I was still using the dinner table in the kitchen, which kind of worked out well because we were cutting such large panels and the dinner table really gave us that space. The only downside was we did have some squatters. When it came to lining the garment, very similar to look 2, I just went for a cheaper synthetic material. I also didn't really want to buy anything new because look 4's fabric was brand new, but I actually had this leftover lining fabric from my grad collection, which worked out nicely. Yes, it's mismatched, but again, it's only hiding the construction of the garment and it only exists to feel comfortable for the wearer. Also, annoyingly, I don't have any footage of me putting in the boning, which was really fun. We just sewed boning channels down to the fabric and then fed the metal spiral boning through. And yeah, we sewed up the bodice and the lining together, and I liked where things were going. I did put a strip of fusing down the back where the eyelets would go for the corset lacing, but very similar to the cowboy look previously, the fusing was crap and would not stay down, so I ended up sewing the pieces down. Whether this actually provided structure, we'll never know. So, what the am I saying? I also love to film me bagging out anything that I make, just because if there are any issues or errors, I'm getting the live reaction. Luckily, when we were sewing the bodice and lining together and bagging it out, it was pretty successful. It took me a while to figure out what bagging out actually meant, but the bag out method is where you sew the outer fabric and the lining fabric together by the right side, leaving an opening so that you can flip it and have the right sides facing out. Even though I know the definition, I'm still reading the script to make sure that I get it right. So this photo alone looks so cool to me. I'm not sure why. I think it's just because everything looks so clean and well finished. Once I took the photo, I knew I was on the right track and that I was making something I was going to be happy with. But also, you can see that there are some extra tentacles out of panel 3 jutting downwards. And this was not drafted. I was making the final and thought, why don't we add this in? So as you can see that even when making the final garment, I was still making changes and still evolving the piece. The skirt was a similar experience minus the boning. The lining again was made from mismatched fabrics. Trying the thing on before adding the eyelets, I knew it was cute and I knew I felt cute in it. I was also a little bit annoyed that the front panels of the skirt used the same part of the fabric. You can see like the same flower like right next to each other. I'm sure no one would see it because the fabric is quite busy, but I feel like better care could have been taken into making sure that wouldn't happen. So I halted production for this piece from the start of July to mid-August as I was waiting for this eyelet puncher to come in, which would greatly help me fit the eyelets. It's the same eyelet puncher that I used for look 1, but in this time I went on to make other pieces, new pieces, or like going back to previous ones, I'm not too sure. But you could probably tell at this point that I do love to start a lot of projects at once. Most of the time, finish them all around the same time. And while this feels euphoric when you get 5 or 6 projects done in the span of a fortnight, it does mean that you sometimes feel like you're stalling in the process and that you feel like you're never going to actually finish any creative piece. And I do have a fear of giving up. I am scared from time to time that I can't complete what I set out to do. I did a lot of activities as a teenager. I played the cello, I did rowing, I did soccer. A little bit later on, I wanted to get into screenwriting. I wanted to be a screenwriter, so I was like writing a screenplay for the longest time. I was even studying an entirely different degree before I did a 180 and started studying fashion. A lot of these passions and interests that I haven't followed through on or found an accomplishment in have felt like failures from time to time. And I do doubt myself. I worry I bite off more than I can chew, and I always think I could just chew like crazy. I often assume I'm going to choke on my aspirations. I had set myself up with a challenge to make a collection with more looks than I had ever made in a project, let alone in a year. I was worried I was wasting my time and my money on a dream that I could not achieve, but I just kept pushing myself, not always because I believed in myself, but because I wanted to prove myself right. I do regularly have to remind myself of the stuff I've already made and the stuff I've already accomplished. Anyway, at this point we'd moved into our workspace. I'd acquired my new hole puncher and it was time to continue going on. So hoop skirt time. So originally, like I said, I was annoyed that the hoop skirt wasn't going to be one continuous panel, but honestly, the busyness of the fabric really meant that you weren't going to see the seams of where the hoop skirt was joined together, so it really wasn't that much of an issue. The fabric wasn't lined for the hoop skirt, but we did use one layer of tulle just to give a bit of buffer between the fabric and the crinoline. So the crinoline, which is just like the skeleton of the shape of which we were draping the fabric, I just bought one off Etsy. I was making a lot of elements for each look and it was quite a big project. I honestly felt like making a crinoline would have just been a bit of a waste of time, so I opted out of it. My thinking for buying a crinoline is the same logic that a painter would use when buying a canvas for a painting. You're admiring the paint on the canvas. You you wouldn't really care that the painter didn't build their own canvas. Similar to how you're looking and appreciating the fabric on the crinoline. And giving the hoop skirt a try on, you know I was feeling my oats. The headpiece honestly was very last minute. I had this fantastic idea to have nearly every single look have some form of headpiece or face covering, so that there was a through line between every single look, that there was some form of masquerade or covering. The headpiece design was produced from a costume face mask and cardboard panels, which were all secured together by a plastic headband. A very delicate item. I didn't really know of other ways to make it more structurally sound. There was a consequence to this because it was sitting in my bedroom, and one day I just walked past it and bumped it accidentally. The cardboard panel just sat like that for the longest time. So originally I had chopsticks keeping everything up, but I had to go through and put some like aluminium boning or wiring through it. So to cover the inner workings and like the headband and the chopstick and the wiring, I just used excess fabric to cover the backs and the side of the headband. And to cover the headband piece, I just fashioned these cute little like earring shapes that would jut out. I feel like they really complemented the whole sort of geometric look that the headpiece was giving. And with 4 out of 4 complete, it was time to photo shoot. And here we are on the other side of this whole process. And looking back, look 4, I really think could be the peak of this collection. There's just something about it that just is really special. I think because it's a drag look, because it's got a silhouette, a really classic silhouette, because it's got a really fun and interesting fabric. I really think it's the perfect storm of something that I've been trying to make in the past but never hit the nail on the head. I really think this just is an amalgamation of what I've attempted in the past. We can go straight into the negatives, sure, but what would I do different? I would definitely make the skirt pattern and the hoop skirt one panel. I know it's probably really difficult to see because of the fabric, but I can see that line, which is where the hoop skirt got sewn into the bottom portion of the pencil skirt component. And I just really think if it was like one complete panel, I think that would make for a better looking garment. I would also try to make a handpiece like accessory that's very similar to the headpiece. Like, could you imagine the headpiece but pretty much on the hands, which makes it look like the wearer has really huge fingers? I think that could look really zany and quirky and cute. I do also remember toying with the idea of making like a mask or like a pair of sunnies, which reminded me very much of Lazy Susan, who won Down Under season 4 and is a host of Down Under versus the World. Like sort of the sunglasses matching the dress, very Lee Bowery coded, but you wouldn't put a bumper sticker on a Bentley, so you wouldn't put a pair of sunglasses on Delonce's face. Another thing with the skirt, the hoop skirt's getting a lot of flack, but another thing I would change is the underlining fabric. In what was made, there was the hoop skirt crinoline, there was the tulle, and then the outer fabric. But I think if we went for a netting rather than a tulle, netting, in my understanding, is a much more stiffer fabric and really gets that volume. From my experience, you can use 1 layer of netting or you could use like 5 layers of tulle. Like, that's how impressive and strong netting is. I think it would have just led for a more of a fuller hoop skirt. In the final images and on the day, the hoop skirt did just drop a bit, so it was a bit more of a like a classic mermaid finish, but I would have liked it if there was a bit more of a like sort of like a hemisphere, like a dome sort of fall, so that you could tell that there's like genuine volume in the skirt. I would add a modesty panel to the back. I do think in general this look probably is like the weakest in terms of a 360-degree visual. In a lot of what I make, I've only really ever got like the front visual hero shot in mind. So sometimes, a lot of the time, when it comes to hemming or when it comes to like back shots or back visuals, it does tend to go on the back burner, only because like in my head I'm thinking of like what's the final shot, what can be edited out. If it could be edited out, oh, my dry is finished. if it can be edited out, don't worry about it too much. Like if the hem looks a bit shoddy, like we can always touch it up in post. With that in mind, when I made the headpiece, for example, the bits that close up everything at the back does look a bit like a dog's breakfast. So if I was to do this look again, I would take a bit more care to make sure that if this was to go down a runway, for example, from any point of the audience, you wouldn't be able to find like a defect or a miscommunication between the designer and the sewing machine. Speaking of the headpiece, I would love to make it a bit more applicable and a bit more easier to wear. We did have that problem on the shoot day. The headpiece just like you saw it in the footage, it was a tiny little headband was used for the foundation. If I had like an actual hair clip or like a hair thing just to really root it into the wearer's hair, it would just make for a much more stable headpiece. I also just don't think the tentacles are doing it for me. Like, I knew that I wanted to just drape it on the wearer's body, and it was going to be something that we figured out on the day. But I really wish that there was just some construction step that fixed the panel into its final position, and then that's just how it's worn. Like there was no rigmarole or improvising on the day. Enough negative talk. I think the fabric is pretty incredible. I absolutely love Fabric Lab in Fitzroy, Brunswick. It's a Northside fabric store in Melbourne, and I'm really happy with the mixture of color going on with the gold that I've had with this collection of introducing more than 2 colors in the final thing. I think this look definitely nails it on the head. I do remember toying with the idea of using the wrong side of the fabric as well. It was like this inverted color, very Luigi's Final Smash and Smash Brothers Brawl, like the negative zone thing in the circle. And I did toy with the idea of like maybe the body of the bodice sort of having right side, wrong side, right side, wrong side, alternating thing. But it just looked a bit, not clowny. It just looked weird, but not like a good weird, but just like a confusing weird. I think coming off the response of look 3, I do feel a lot more confident in sharing this look with you. I think look 3 garnered a very positive feedback that honestly I wasn't expecting, and it's not because I didn't think highly of look 3. I think it's just the headspace I was in. I wasn't feeling very confident in general about this collection and about like the next couple of chapters of my fashion endeavors. So look 3 really impressed me, surprised me, and excited me. Another thing, I really need to figure out how fusing works. My God, this is like the 3rd look that has had issues with iron-on fusing. It's very, very irritating. I will say, in general, this look indicates where the brand is headed or where it should be heading in terms of drag, in terms of costume, in terms of not ready to wear, in terms of not menswear, in terms of not setting myself up with a goal. And a final thing as well, we still have the issue of squatters. We have not been able to eliminate them. They just keep somehow sneaking in. But yeah, if you've been watching this far along, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. If you want to continue supporting me, we now have merch, which I've been wearing this whole time. The foundation cap, which is the first official piece of merchandise in the collection. If you want to support the brand, you can purchase one at babeitsalessandro.com. And yeah, my name is Alec, but you can call me Alessandro Lorenzo Greco. Thank you for following along. I've had a ball, and yeah, next we'll have the look 4 sketching video, and then we're on to look 5. So we hope to see you then. Thank you so much. Bye.